Welcome to the Peak of Possibility podcast, brought to you by Peak Path Health. If you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember, if you or someone you care about is facing challenges, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to support you on your journey to health and wellness.
Seven.
All right.
I've been seeing angel numbers everywhere lately.
Oh, really?
Like all the time.
What does it mean?
I don't know. I think that like
What are angel numbers? Like, I know it's
like
the 777 or the 1111.
or like 222 or whatever. I don't know. I'll just go through periods of my life where I'm like, it's not that I'm asking to be reminded that like there is a God and I'm taken care of, but it's in those moments of like major transition, like I'm going through right now with my career, where all of a sudden like my phone will be like 2 messages, 2 missed calls, 22 emails. Or on my phone, I'll just see like, 2222 or 1111 or whatever all the time. I don't necessarily look up like what the numbers mean, but I'm like, oh, there's a reason why. I don't normally see these like
You're into like
444.
You're into like the horoscopes, numbers.
Absolutely. I mean, my mom raised me to be a little witch. So, yeah, I'm not so far in it. I'll actually tell you, like, there was a time when I was so deep in it where I was like really seeking. I think it was like around my 7 years of sobriety. Like really needing that spiritual connection and just feeling a lack. And I went too far deep and felt like I had like a little spiritual psychosis.
What is too far deep?
Like
mediums?
Yeah, like I was.
How often were you seeing them?
No, it wasn't that I was seeing mediums. I feel like I probably am one. Mm-hmm. Like I've always, since I was a little girl, I would see things. Like it used to be a party trick my mom would do. And it started, I remember the first time that this happened, I was 3 years old. We were at my grandfather's house in Austin, Texas, and my great uncle Ott was in a home. And Uncle Ott was like a artist mystic before there were artists. Like that was like not a normal
before
thing.
It was a cool.
But he was in a home. And no one had been to the home. He had just been moved into the home, and we were going to do Christmas dinner. They were going to host like a big dinner, like family reunion style. Everyone was going to come in because Uncle Ott was like a huge piece of the family. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, Mom, we're going to go to the pink castle building with the like yellow flags down the road. And she didn't pay any mind to what I was saying.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we like turned the street. And there was this big, long road with all these yellow flags. And the old folks' home was like a big pink castle
building. Oh, my God.
And my mom was like, that was really fucking weird. And then there would be times where my mom and my dad divorced when I was 3. And it became like, I'm going to tell your mom. Like one of my mom's boyfriends was really into this. He would be like, I'm going to tell your mom one word around the corner, and I'll give you $100 if you can guess the exact thing that I'm gonna say. And then he would come back around, and she would too, and then I'd be like, oak tree, like I would know right away, and it was it. Or he would be like, know the amount of floral arrangements in that other room, how many are there? And it would be like exact.
Have you ever done the thing where you're with like another person and you do like 1, 2, 3 and you say the word like 1, 2, 3?
Oh, no, I've seen that on TikTok.
Okay.
Yeah, like so, telepathy.
Yeah. Like, do you think that there's some kind of like intuitive spiritual connection between like all beings and all people? Because I've done it multiple times with friends where it's like 1, 2, 3 scissors, right? 1, 2, 3, and then you keep going until you're aligned.
The same thing.
And sometimes, depending on the person you're doing it with, it can take 10, 15, 20 times. Sometimes it's like 1 or 2 times, amazing. And then you're both saying the same word at the same time.
I met with a spiritual counselor a few weeks ago, not for me, but because we work in this field and we meet with people who are on the same kind of path that we're on. And I love talking about spirituality with people because there's so many different opinions out there. And he was like, your kind of analogy of what God is so interesting to me. I'm going to start using it. And how I tell people, like, I have a lot of sponsees that are like very agnostic, you know, and we'll go through we agnostics, and eventually they'll come to their own understanding of their higher power. But how I explain it is like, you know, when you're in the hospital and you have like all the things on and the thing is ticking with your heartbeat, I'm like, I just view God and the universe or infinite source or love or whatever the fuck you want to call it. I don't care. It's just a word. Right. God laughs at us when we die and we go up there, and like God's like, ha ha ha, like you thought I was some big man in the sky, like I am everything all at once, all time periods. You know, that's my thought. Okay, so if there was like imagine like a linear line that like exceeds space and time, that goes on forever towards nothing, always has been, is just continuing. Like, we are these little blips that come down to have this experience, this human experience, just like you would when you're tracking your heartbeat, right? And what's interesting is that, like, for whatever reason, this thing, this consciousness that is all of us, right? We get this opportunity to have this human experience, and we come down here, and what happens is we come down, right? Here we are, babies, and we forget that we're ever attached to this ever expansive thing that is everything all the time.
Right.
Everywhere. And the goal of having a human experience, in my opinion, and this is kind of Buddhist, but I am like a practicing Buddhist, right, is to live life on life's terms, to have struggle and to experience suffering and great joy and beauty and all of the things, and raise up in our consciousness until eventually we go back.
I totally agree. And I think, like you mentioned, agnosticism, right? And like you, I have like a spiritual connection and a belief in something greater, and it's really like the most important fact of my life, right? Yeah. But I always say that there's these areas of our life, no matter how spiritually connected or God conscious or whatever the word you want to use, no matter how close we get to this idea of spirituality, there's always these areas that we experience like agnosticism and disbelief. Like, for example, for me, like I believe that something greater, the universe, worked in my life in order for me to get sober. That's my belief. I don't know if it's true, but it's working really well. So like I'm sticking to it, right? Yep. Like I believe that in the depths of my soul. But like the longer I'm sober, right? I'm 6 years sober now. And the longer I'm sober, the more I believe that fact. But I find myself failing to acknowledge that like if a spiritual power can like absolve me of like a crippling drug addiction, then why am I unwilling to turn to like some kind of spiritual connection for like areas like finance or like my like romantic and sex relations, or like it never occurs to me to bring God into the bedroom. Do you know what I mean? I mean, okay, it's changed, like it's shifted, right? But that's like an area where I find myself leaning toward agnosticism, and then I'll try and like control and manage the situations and fix it. Or like even like, you know, when I'm obsessing on my weight or how I look, it's like, oh, it didn't occur to me that like also God, if God is everything, right? Yeah. Like God is everything. Like why am I not actively seeking like spiritual connection and support in these areas of my life? Do you know what I mean?
Well, here's the thing. Like, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. I think that, like, again, going back to like my Buddhist philosophy, like we have an ego or a humanness about us. And I mean, this is my problem with everyone going out and doing ayahuasca, because I've done a lot of psychedelics. Like, absolutely, you can have an ego death. Most of the time it's temporary. But you can go and have this experience that's so profound that shows you that you are a part of that string, that ever moving linear thing. And then a lot of people end up coming back down into their humanness and go, well, what the fuck is all of this? And why am I even here? And why am I doing this? It can also give you an inferiority complex. And listen, I'm like not against it for everyone. I think that there's like a certain time where it can definitely be beneficial. However, I think that the challenge that we have as humans is that God has gifted us with this thing called free will, and unchecked, you see what we see today, right? You see endless wars, you see greed, you see the top 1%, you see all of the things, right? And so I think that like the perspective shift that I got in recovery is that like if I have this thing in my mind that's never fulfilled and that always needs more, and I've tried to fix my mind by going to therapy, by being more mindful, by changing behaviors, by being more like disciplined, you know, and it hasn't worked, right? The self-help industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's never enough. And women specifically spend so much money trying to be better. They spend money on retreats. They spend money on books and on conferences and listen to podcasts and all of those things. And those things can be great. Like, I love a Glennon Doyle, podcast. Like, nothing against that. Love it. But if like my mind could actually fix my mind without the help of a higher power, then I would be great. And so for me, as somebody who like really could see the ways in which I had tried to manage and control my life around my drinking and using, like, I'm just so clear that it doesn't work for me. Now, does that mean that I'm perfect at it all the time? No. But like I have theism in every area of my life. I'm a shopaholic, sexaholic, loveaholic, codependent, never enough, drug addict, alcoholic, workoutaholic, whatever you want to fucking call it, eating disorder girly, right? Like I will take everything and anything to the extreme because I'm never satisfied with the way that I feel and the way that life is going. And so the only solution for me, and listen, there have been moments where I've been coasting in my recovery, but I always end up hitting a bottom
of some kind.
Kind.
And that's so interesting to say, right? Because there are, like, after getting sober, right, for the people who, are maybe just new, like, you think the bottom is when, like, your addiction, your drug addiction or whatever it is that you're struggling with, like, that's it. And then you get sober and you start to live life and you find yourself hitting bottoms in sobriety and in recovery, right? Like emotional bottoms, spiritual bottoms. I've seen some close friends of mine have really severe bottoms, like with their like sex and love and their relationships and their attachment. I mean, like almost more severe than their addiction, because like now it's really easy to look to drugs and alcohol as like, oh, that was the problem. Now I've taken this away and my life is better. But when you've been sober for some time and you find yourself like in a place of like having suicidal ideation, wanting to kill yourself, like can't get out of bed.
7 years sober, that I told you about, that spiritual kind of quote unquote psychosis that led to me being crippled with SI, that was non-responsive to drugs, and really having to do some fucking work to get out of that. It was brutal.
Well, let's fast forward. Tell us about kind of your journey, or sorry, back up, about your journey of like getting sober. Like, what was it like? What was your like childhood like? Like, where did it all begin? And what started your alcoholism and your addiction?
So you've heard me speak. Like I speak at a lot of meetings. And so I always preface my story by saying like I had a very traumatic childhood. None of that made me an alcoholic. And I think that that's really important. Like when people share in meetings, I used to go, oh, they have the same story as me, or they don't have the same story as me. And I was always looking for the similarities, right? Which I think is like a good thing. But I always want people to focus more so on the feelings. Because you can have minimal childhood trauma or no childhood trauma at all and still be an alcoholic addict. And I think that, like, I love the works of Dr. Gabor Mate. I'm a big fan. I've had the honor and privilege of interviewing him before. I think he's an incredible man and a thought leader, and he's cultivating new ideas in this space that I think are really important. But, like, I saw him speak once at a big conference,
I
and
think I
this
was
guy
there.
basically said, like, I've never had trauma before. Like, I didn't have trauma and I became an alcoholic addict. Explain it. And he was like, well, were you spanked as a child? And like, okay. But like, there's plenty of children that are like in Gaza right now that are being that there's torture going on in the Middle East, right now. And there's like true famine. And like, look at what happened to the Jewish community, those people who lived through the Holocaust, like, not all of them became
Addicts and
alcoholic
alcoholics.
addicts.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I just think like that this thing is a gift that we get. However, I just think it's luck of the draw. Like, you either get it or you fucking don't. Now, does the trauma help?
Right.
Absolutely not. Does it start you drinking and using earlier than you should have? Absolutely it does. That was my experience, right?
But we become captured by our trauma. Right?
Absolutely. And like, one thing that, it's interesting because my partner Chris, and like Chris and I, we've sat in this room for his podcast before, and like we'll have like very heated conversations because we have very different approaches, but we can both agree on this: like, you are not a victim of your circumstance. You get to choose to be for however long you want to, and people hear that and they're like, fuck you. And I get that because I was one of those people that was like, I should have never been sexually abused,
right,
as a 4-year-old. That went on for years. I should have never been sexually abused by babysitters, by family members. I should have had parents that loved me. I shouldn't have had an alcoholic father who was checked out and physically violent in our household. My parents ideally would have been divorced. My mom was like so on another fucking plane when I was growing up. And like, that's just some of my trauma. And so, yeah, like, that's terrible that those things happen, but how long do you want to keep it?
Right. Well, I think, at least for me, like, I had to get to a point where I acknowledged that some of the things that had happened to me throughout my life were bad and probably shouldn't have happened to a child. Like, I didn't deserve that and it wasn't my fault. So like, recognition around that and like relinquishing all of the fault was important, but also recognizing that the alibi and the story that I was stuck to was the thing that was keeping me sick, right? So I had created this story of my life of like, I'm an addict because my mom left when I was 11. I'm an addict because I was sexually abused as a young child at, 6 years old. I'm an addict because, I was sexually assaulted. Like, all of these things, I had all of these ideas. I didn't have a stable home environment. And like, all of those things are true. But my sister also grew up in those exact same circumstances, and
I have a sister the same,
and she's not an
alcoholic addict.
yeah,
right,
exactly.
And so, it's interesting because I when I usually share, and I will go more into my story in a second, but I really just get into solution because I want people to have the best shot at achieving sustained recovery. And I think that a lot of people, like, both of us are heavy in the 12 steps. If you're not into it, then by all means, my hat's off to you if you can make it work in another way. For me, I tried everything. It did not work. And so, until I really understood, like, I was identifying as an alcoholic addict because I wanted to fit in the rooms, right? Nobody forced me to do that. I chose to do that, but I did not understand what my alcoholism was, right? I did not understand, like I was talking about earlier, like that incessant need for more. I did not understand that disease centers in my mind. I did not understand that abnormal reaction to drugs and alcohol that I was having and why, right? And so until I like went through the first 60 pages of the big book and really did a deep dive into figuring out like what this thing was, and like if I was and getting clear, like, can I actually manage this thing on my own? Yes or no? I had no shot at staying sober. So going back to what you had asked of like my story in like a broad strokes way, all of those things did happen to me. Drugs and alcohol were a normal thing in my household. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Both of my parents worked in the entertainment industry. I quote unquote graduated high school 2 years early. I was a music video girl by the age of 16. I was touring all over the world. I was, being flown to Paris. It was lifestyles of that like environment.
The rich
right?
and famous.
Of the rich and famous, of partying with some of the biggest rock stars. And I was a heroin addict and I wanted to die every day. It was fun until it wasn't fun anymore. It became very not fun very fast, which is why I ended up getting sober when I was 19. In between there, I had a television show. I robbed a house. It was all over the news.
I think you're breezing past that a little bit.
Well, I just am like everyone knows my story. If you've in the recovery space, and people will have me on and be like, tell me your story. And it's like, everyone knows my story. But what I want people to take away from this is the feelings. My entire life, I was completely desperate and totally unwilling to change, right? In a real way. I wanted to pick and choose the way that I changed, right? I would change for the boy, or I would change because someone was judging me, or I would change but ultimately I was never able to change. I felt like I was never enough all the time. Right? I had these feelings of just like hopelessness, that I could never be helpful to others in a real way, even though I wanted to.
Right.
Because that's the beautiful thing about us with this thing, this ism, whatever you want to call it, is like we really care about others. We really, really do. We just can't get out of our own way to help anybody else other than ourselves, because
we
we're
fuck
inherently
shit up when we
selfish
try.
and self-centered. Yes.
I know.
Yes. And so I ended up going to jail, right? And
How long did you go to jail for?
The first time I had a 6-month sentence. I did, I think, like
where did you go? Linwood?
Days, Linwood. 40 days in Linwood. And I was in
were you in the public eye when all of that was happening?
Yeah.
Got it.
So I was in solitary confinement. And the women in there were in there for murder and sexual assault and gang violence and all of the things. And some of them were like the nicest women that I've ever met. Like,
not some of them, not all of them.
Yeah, some of them, not all of them.
Yeah,
some of them were like really unwell people, that needed the opportunities that I was eventually given. But I remember I kicked cold turkey in that jail cell, and it was like the worst detox of my life. I'll spare you all of the gore and horror of that, but I remember just thinking like, my God, how did we end up here? Like in a 3-year progression of my life, I went from being a kid with a lot of fucked up pain, but that was still a very good kid, very, very good kid, to
was there
dating
such thing as a bad kid?
And dealing drugs and all of the things that were coming with the progression of my disease. And then I had this clarity, whatever you want to call it, that like I should probably never do heroin again. Like I should probably like.
Had you ever had that thought before?
Not completely. Like my Tess. So Tess had an overdose in my arms.
Who's Tess?
She was like a sister to me. So my mom raised her on and off since we were 3 years old. Her mom was, I'll leave that story to her, but it was just like we used together. We were ride or dies. She was on the show with me. And I really she was like the most important person in my life. And there was a time where, she took a hot shot and that was that. And like, I watched her, I was high out of my mind and I came to, and she had purple lips and wasn't breathing and the whole thing. And they wouldn't let me call. We were at basically like in a drug den in the valley. And like I yanked her from the house and got her in the car and was like trying to resuscitate her, and a cop came by, like just drove by. I was like screaming for help. This is like, it was really bad. And I was like, we'll never shoot heroin again. Of course that didn't last.
Right.
I was like, we're just gonna smoke.
Right.
Like, as if that works, right? We're just going to drink beer and
Well, I
we're
think
not going to drink vodka.
There's like all these moments that I had, and I like in my mind, like what I picture is like a little window. You know what I mean? The moment where you're like, enough is enough. I have to stop this. Like, I can't go on. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose the relationship. I don't, want to disappoint my loved ones and my family or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to lose this job. I don't want to like spend my paycheck. I don't want to lose my apartment. And like that window opens, that like little moment of clarity. And my problem is that window had opened slightly so many times, but I never like jumped through and took the action that was required in order to actually get long-term like abstinence and sobriety until the moment that I did, right?
Yeah. And I thought that this would be that moment. Like, for me, I really just thought like heroin was the problem. And I'll tell you eventually how I got sober was somebody very clearly showing me how that was not the problem, actually. So while I was in jail, after I kicked, I almost died. I got a double kidney infection. My kidneys were shutting down. I was pissing and puking blood. I was so sick. They finally took me to the infirmary 6 days later. I was in such bad condition, running a massive fever. Like, body was like becoming septic. It was so bad. And I come out of that and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go back to using heroin. Like, as if I had the willpower to be able to do that. I thought that I did. And I was like, okay, this was a good start. This was like, 40 some odd days. I don't remember exactly how long I was in there. They called my name. I got out. My parents picked me up, and I asked them to drop me off at my friend's house. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking, but that night I got blackout drunk. My friend's boyfriend tried to sexually assault me. I kicked my high heel through the corner of his lip.
Oh my God.
And I came to in my bathroom somehow. I don't know how I got there. Like, someone, like, fully clothed, with someone putting the shower on me, like trying to wake me up from my drunken stupor. And I didn't think that was a problem. I went to probation once. I stopped going. I was on the run within 2 weeks. I was back to, I had no money, no resources, couldn't afford my rent, gas, electric. And that was it, And then I had 0.08 grams of heroin. Like, I literally had no money. Like, I was buying like dime bags every couple of days, like really stretching my dope.
Right.
And I was so dope sick. And it was December 1st, 2010. I asked my mom, I had no heat in my little studio apartment. It was a very cold winter. I asked her if I could sleep over there at her house. And she said, if you can get a ride and get over here, you can do it. Because I didn't have, I couldn't afford gas. I didn't have a car. So I had my drug dealer come pick me up,
as we do,
drive me out there. And he was like, don't call me again, which I was planning on calling him at 10 so I can go panhandle some more money for drugs and, get well again. He dropped me off at my mom's, and that night I was using in her downstairs bathroom. And I remember looking at myself, and I have like the dark blue bags. You know what I mean? Like, you have not gotten a good night's sleep, and you don't even, and you've been like carpet sifting, looking, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, on
and
your
you're
hands
super
and knees.
paranoid, and like everyone's out. Oh my God, it was so bad. And I remember looking up at myself after I like took that last little hit on the foil. And I was going to like scrape my tutor the next morning.
Because we're not shooting anymore. We're only smoking.
We're only smoking. No, I was shooting, but like I couldn't afford enough dope to actually shoot up. Like I only had like,
you had to
I was like rinsing
it.
my cottons. Like, it was so bad. And I looked in the mirror at my mom. No one knows. A lot of these people aren't going to know what rinsing your cottons are, but that's okay. It's bad. And I looked up and I was like, if there is a God, I need help. And then I went and crawled into my sister's bed, who was
And this is
13.
after you got out of jail, right?
Yeah. This is like 2 months down. I've been on the run. I haven't gone to probation, not showing up. Something's coming, but I have no idea. And I was so delusional that I didn't think I had to go to probation. Like, I had a 6-year suspension over my head. But for whatever reason, like, just all other thoughts go out the window, right? Like, I've got my eye on the target of being as high as possible and checking out of my existence and my reality. That overrides everything. I remember just sitting down in my sister's bed, and the next morning the SWAT team came to my mom's house. And they caught me with that 0.08 grams of heroin, and I knew that I had violated, and I was going to be sentenced to 6 years in prison.
Honestly, kudos to you for being able to keep it. Every time I would keep enough drugs the night before, I always had a plan to keep my wake up. So I was like, okay, in the morning, I would always do it.
Really?
Every time. Yeah.
That sickness is so real. Like
I would figure it out the next day.
There was no figuring it out. Like, I could not function. I could not get out of bed. I could not get like to the dealer if I did not use. It was so bad. So, you know, that ended up being the thing that saved my life, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And
what was it like having the SWAT team like come to your house? Was it you surprised?
Yeah, I mean, that was the second time it happened. At that point, I was just like, well, I mean, I was a piece of shit. I tried to blame the drugs on my little teenage sister.
Oh, my God. I did something like that to my little sister, too.
I know.
Oh, my gosh.
And my mom was like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you.
When I think I was 19, maybe, I left detox, AMA. For those of you that don't know, it's against medical advice. I took off with like 4 other people. We copped dope, got high, and then ran out of money. And I had all these weird detox people from like a state facility at my apartment. And we went to like Filene's or Macy's to go like steal clothes and boost them, right, to sell them. Yeah. And all of them got away. I got caught. I got arrested because like that was really never my hustle. I was just like desperate times called for desperate measures. And I used my little sister who was 6 months pregnant. I used her name, her social, and like shortly thereafter I like took off and essentially was on the run as well for like a year in Texas. And I eventually came back and got caught, and my sister had gotten pulled over when she was like 8.5 months pregnant, and they were like, you have a warrant out for your arrest. And she thought it was like some, you know, POS that I had been getting high with that had done it. And then they mentioned a tattoo on my right wrist, and they said carpe diem. I got it when I was 12. Don't judge me. It was on the person's right wrist, and she knew it was me, and she never said anything because she was just so happy I was gone from Massachusetts. Like, she almost went to jail for me at 8.5 months pregnant.
Oh my God.
After being like pulled over for a traffic stop.
Wow. It's
crazy what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it ended up being the thing that saved my life. And so going back to like, you know, I thought the drugs were the problem and I'm the problem. Like, it took me 3 months into treatment. I ended up relapsing on whippets. And I had at that point like a head full of AA.
Had you been to treatment before?
No. Nope.
First time.
One and done. Never been back.
Wow.
Yeah. So
was it a good experience?
I got sober at 19 and stayed sober. It was an interesting one. Yeah, I think there was like highs and lows, definitely. I mean, it wasn't like the treatment that we provide to people now.
Right.
You know, I was on a scholarship. I basically did like 30 days of res and then lived in like a shack and like cleaned my way and like drove people around and went to 2 meetings a day. And that's what it was for a year. And they drug tested me and whatever else. So long story short, there was this man, and he's since passed, but he was kind of like my little guardian angel, and his name was Robert, but he was also known as Cadillac Ron. Do you know Christopher Paulson? Chris Paulson?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Chris's brother.
Mm-hmm.
Funny story, his brother ended up becoming a therapist at the treatment center that I owned years and years later, and I knew, you know, who he was and like connected the two of them because I was telling this story, and he was like, that's my brother. And I was like, oh my God.
How did he pass?
An overdose. Yeah. So he would run these big groups, and I had relapsed on whippets, and I went to the big group, and I was having like a bottom of sorts, but I couldn't see it that way, and I was so just like resistant. And he just looks at me and he was like, you know, Alexis, normal people would never, ever use heroin in the first place. They would never stick a needle in their arm. They would never do cocaine like you do it. They would never sell drugs. They would that's not normal. And something about it just clicked. Like everything clicked into place where I was like, oh, I'm the problem. Like nobody else here is the problem. My mom and dad aren't the problem. My abuse isn't the problem. My CPTSD and all the fucking diagnosis that I had received of major depressive disorder, all the things, I was like, that's not the problem.
Right.
I'm the problem. Like my perception of reality, the way that I operate in this world, my obsession with myself, my constant need to check out, like that is all me. And like it just set me on fire, and so I just did what was outlined before me. Like I got a hardcore sponsor. We worked the steps in a very similar way, like line by line, word by word, really understanding steps 1, 2, and 3 before you can ever enter 4 through 12. Like a comprehensive 4th step, being of service to others from the beginning, taking as many commitments as possible, getting sponsored, like all of the things. And what do you know? My life got better. Like I started to feel less and less depressed. I love going over the bedevilments with sponsees in we agnostics, right? Like we have to ask ourselves, on my own power, can I control my emotional nature? Absolutely not. I was a fucking emotional ticking time bomb at all times, period. Can I be really useful to others? No. Can I manage my pocketbook and my expenses? Absolutely not. Am I employable? No. Can I be really happy? No. Am I full of fear? Absolutely, right? Am I in a desperate condition on my own willpower? Absolutely. And so I really just could clearly see how the life that I had been living was going to lead. I was on a path of nowhere going towards hell. Like I was just running around like a psycho. And all of a sudden it just clicked. And I was like, oh, okay, so I have to have a perception shift. I have to have a spiritual experience. I have to be willing to lay aside my pride and ego and make amends. I have to start working with others. And then it was, I get to lay my ego aside. I get, like, the perceptive shift started happening, right? I get to work with others. I get to be useful and helpful. And like, what do you know? The depression went away. What do you know? I started feeling better about myself. What do you know? My obsession of the mind of constantly needing to check out with others disappeared.
Were there other things that you did outside of that you think was also helpful outside of like the traditional channels of, 12-step work?
Yeah. I mean, this is what I'll say. I've always been a seeker. I think that it's wonderful. And at the same time, like the 12 steps, like I don't have all day long. And I've talked about this on other podcasts, like the similarities between like Buddhist principles and the 12 steps, right? We have an ego. We have to be rid of it. We have to develop a practice of mindfulness, and we have to walk softly and peacefully on this planet. That's what it is.
Right.
And like being the peaceful warrior, right? That's what this is all about. And so, like the 12 steps has really kind of been the solution to all of my problems, like all of my addictive behaviors, all of my depression, all of that. There have been some additional things that I've done that I think are really helpful, specifically around nervous system regulation. Like the 12 steps altered my mind and my spirit and my body to some degree, right? Like I don't deal with the allergy anymore. But the nervous system is like a whole other topic that we could spend an hour and a half on. But doing internal family systems work and doing somatic work, in addition to some of my like other woo-woo practices, have really transformed my inner being. So like I there were periods of my sobriety where I recognized specifically around attachment and relationships, where I could maintain having like a peaceful conversation and stating my needs and all the things, but my inner world was like fractured.
Right.
Like I just felt the anxiety all the time. And so by like utilizing those tools that I learned of 2 years of working with an internal family systems and somatic experiencing practitioner, changed the game for me. Like when my nervous, like I feel like my whole, like on more of a woo-woo level, like my whole being, energy, body, like I walk into spaces, you know, doing an intervention, let's say, where people can like palpably sense the groundedness.
Right.
I did not have that before. I had the knowledge, I had the lingo. Right. I could connect with others on that level, but like that real grounded, powerful energy was not there.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for people to spout all kinds of things and sound really smart and intellectual and insightful. But I think there is definitely a difference between, you know, like talking about it and being about it. You know what I mean? And you can sense a presence in certain people when you're around them, when you communicate with them. And not only that, I like to watch what people do, not just what they say.
Amen.
Like, you can be the most empowering speaker or mentor or spiritual advisor or sponsor in the entire world, but how you operate in the world is more valuable to me than what you say. And if your words are aligned with your actions, it is that's really what's empowering.
And I want to tell everybody, like, I still struggle with this.
Right,
Glynis
we're
met
human.
me 2 years ago post breakup, and like I wasn't a crazy bitch, but I wasn't at like where I'm at today.
No.
Like my whole world got fucking rocked. You know what I mean? And like I wasn't as grounded and aligned and mindful and whatever as I am in this moment, right? And
There's
so
a lot of transitions happening at that point in your life,
oh
right?
my God,
Recovery,
so
job,
many.
you know, separation.
Oh my God.
Moving.
All of the things. And like my nervous system was not in check, right? And I was operating a little bit out of automatic pilot. Now, thank God I have like these principles and I understand them and I'm like still active in my recovery. But there's definitely moments where, you know, I like, in Buddhist terms, like you have your dharma and then you have your karma. Your karma is just you veering off the path of your dharma, right? Where I've like veered off a little bit and I'm like, the self-will starts creeping in. I'm not really taking the best care of myself. And then like I steer myself back onto the fucking path because I have the tools.
Right.
But like, I don't want anybody thinking that like this is how you and I are
100%.
This is not how we are all
100%.
the time.
We're humans.
We're humans.
Yeah, we're human women. And I mean, one of the beautiful things, I know like when we first met, we like automatically connected. And in my experience, like before I was sober, I had like a deep-seated belief and idea of like women being unsafe, dangerous, cheaters, liars, thieves, and like not being able to connect on like a real authentic level with women or have close female relationships. And one of like the most beautiful experiences I've had is having that shift where I can like meet women and like not only like in powerful, strong, like beautiful women, and I don't see them as the enemy anymore, but an ally, right? And what a beautiful experience that we get to have as women in recovery to like build these like close relationships. Like you and I don't talk every day, but when we do, we usually sit on the phone for 45 minutes and like catch up about what our life looks like and what's happening in the good and the bad and the ugly and all the things, right?
Yeah, it's great. And I love connecting with you, and it's really like the last couple of years have just been such a privilege, and to know that like you're spot on, the relationships that we build in recovery that are true and authentic, and you know, where we're able to suit up and show up for one another when we need it, even if we're not talking every day, is
and
what
expose
it's all
ourselves.
About. 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Like authentically expose ourselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. Thank you,
you,
Alexis. It was great to have you on, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Absolutely.